So, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining us right now. Thanks for watching this video later. I would like to introduce EgoSelf Talks briefly. And this is an interview conversation with open-minded people who are ready to talk about things that really matter in life. This would be life experiences, goals and defeats, love, crises and career. I'm Maria Gorova, a former journalist and a personal coach to be. Would like to invite Matthew Booth, a former professional football player, a founder of the Booth Education and Sport Organization. He is twice father and he is a husband, but still the same guy like you and me. So Matthew, let me invite you. So user request, go live with Matthew. Let's see how it works. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm fine. How was your day so far?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. So far, so good.
That's amazing. Thanks for joining us, Matthew. Last time we met us, I was 15 years old girl, was studying English in the college. And maybe you never noticed me, but I was standing behind the north goal post and trying to say hi in English or ask you something in English. So you influenced my willingness to learn other languages. You influenced my way to think about it. Thank you very much.
Well, from what I can tell, your English is a lot better than mine now, so congratulations.
That was I was worried about. So now I'm fine, feeling great. Thanks to make me smile. Good.
Yeah, that picture that you sent me on Instagram, it was of a very cold Samara Stadium. And I'm just very glad that I'm back in South Africa now. It's 26 degrees Celsius,
Yes.
so a lot warmer.
Yes, at least things changed. And now I live in Germany, by the way. Yes. And, you know, it happened 11 years ago when I moved to Germany, and things seem so familiar now. The favorite bakery, the streets, the trees, the preschool of my daughter, everything seems so easy. But by that time, 11 years ago, it was quite a struggle and somehow emotionally a very hard thing. What about you? You moved many times in your life, and in Russia you spent 6 years. How was it emotionally for your family, for your wife?
Yeah, so it's always very difficult when you leave home. I grew up in Cape Town in South Africa, and at the age of 22, I moved to Johannesburg, which is our economic hub, the big city in South Africa. And so that was my first big challenge when it came to moving. And then in 2002, the bigger decision was to leave the country and to move to Russia. I spent 2 years in Rostov and then 4 years in Samara. And culturally and emotionally, it was pretty tough. But I'm the type of person that tends to keep everything inside, you know. It takes a lot for me to show emotion or to be disturbed. And I kind of have always used football as a release. So when I get on the field, I allow any frustrations or emotions to boil, to be released. And hopefully I can, or I have channeled them in the right way, because sometimes you can boil over and then get into trouble, you know.
Indeed. It's a good way you find still way to express yourself, like football. And so what I hear from this is that it was hard to immigrate to the other country for you. But what about your family? Was it a hard decision for your wife too? How was the life, especially in Russia? Like it's so different, the language is different, people are different, culture, everything.
Yeah, so my wife at the time was studying, and her last paper exam that she wrote, she was, I think, 7 months, 7 months pregnant. So emotionally, you can understand it was very difficult for her. Yeah, and of course, you know, the first time that she traveled to Russia, You can imagine I've been away for 3 or 4 months without seeing her. She arrives in Russia and sees how beautiful the women are there, and you can understand the relationship, the strain on the relationship.
Yes.
You know, it's something that you had to consider as well. So naturally, she eventually moved with me and spent about 5 years of those 6 years with me, with our young son, and we had a fantastic time. We made the most of it. I tried my best to learn the language and to try and ingratiate myself with the locals and with the fans. As a foreigner in another country, when you, especially in the sporting fraternity, it's very important that you ingratiate yourself with the local fans, and try to assimilate yourself with the culture,
Yeah.
and not be too arrogant about the fact that you're a professional sportsman. That's something which I think I did correctly, and I'll be forever grateful that Mama Russia gave me the opportunity to earn a living. You know.
Yeah. Did my bad English influence your good Russian or what? Tell me something in Russian. Do you speak Russian?
Да, конечно.
Oh my God, I switched to Russian.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Russian viewers.
Я вернулся в ЮАР 2008, and there are not many Russian people back here in South Africa, so it's very difficult to practice my Russian.
If you need me, let me know. Personal coach and Russian teacher, Marie Goro. Cool.
No problem.
I think so. I so agree with you, but I had no idea that you went through this actually right assimilation process, being a football player. You know, I thought like the guys arrive, they train a lot, they have their families, they sometimes travel back and forth. But I've never thought it's like people make any effort of learning any language. Cool. Really, really amazing.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Maria, a lot of them don't. And so when times get tough, when you go through a bit of a bad patch, when you're not playing well, if you're sitting on the bench or if you're injured, I don't think players realize that you need the community support. You need the fan support. So if you're going to become arrogant, arrive there with this big head and be arrogant, you're certainly not going to get that support. So any young player or athlete, be it here in South Africa or anywhere in the world, I would definitely encourage them to travel, to get out of their comfort zone, to learn a new language, a new culture, because ultimately it builds character, I feel.
Do you want to become a personal coach? I feel so involved. Let's switch. Cool, amazing, very impressive, and I really agree with you. It's the right way to go, and I try to support people with illnesses, but I also try to support immigrants, because I know how tough it is, and life is quite short, and this period of time to assimilate, to learn things, it takes time, but then this is promises you quality of life in this country, which is amazing. So everyone who's watching us right now or later, if you if you're planning to travel somewhere or to move somewhere, please take this as good advices to manage your life in the foreign country. Right?
Yeah, we have, I mean, here in South Africa, we have a large immigrant population. And sometimes, you know, especially when the economy is depressed, the relations between us and them are strained, you know. But I just feel that nobody wants to leave their home if they can help it. And so we have to be empathetic towards their plight. And I feel that generally, somebody who arrives in a new country, they are under pressure immediately to make a living and to therefore work harder. And I think that's something that locals can learn to do as well, and not simply be complaining all the time about lack of job opportunities. So that is a stress that we are enduring here in South Africa. but I feel that South Africans need to be more empathetic towards an immigrant's plight. Yeah.
To help to assimilate them, to give the courses to learn language and to support their education and so on. This is the normal issue in Europe, I guess. I think they're doing a great job here to let foreigners assimilate, but of course it depends also on individuals who really want to assimilate or who just come to for other reasons, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, and we've got to put pressure on our own government, not just complain about foreigners. We have to put pressure on our own government to sort out or to at least help the issue across our borders. I think that's something that we don't quite fully understand here in South Africa. We should be putting more pressure on our government and not complaining about foreigners taking our jobs, for example. So yeah.
And that's what would create racism. That's actually what creates the problem. And what about Russia? When you've been there, how, from 1 to 10, how racist it was for you? How did you feel?
You know, if I'm honest, Maria, my wife is from Soweto, in Johannesburg. She's a black woman, and she was with us for 5 years in Russia. Mm-hmm. And we did not have one single incident. I think there was a lot of curiosity.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't live in Moscow or St. Petersburg. We lived in Rostov and Samara. So there was a lot of curiosity, but nothing that was ugly. And perhaps it was because I was a football player and most people knew of me. But there wasn't a particular incident that sort of gave us a sense of discomfort.
Yeah.
I you know, a lot of people talk about the racism that occurs in Russia, but my opinion is that it's actually just a small group, a small minority of people that are mainly based in the two big cities. But, you know, you got to understand that occurs in virtually every country. You will have a small group of very insular people who are cocooned, people who perhaps haven't traveled and who are a bit ignorant about different races and different ethnicities. And that occurs throughout the world.
That's true. And when I came to Germany, actually, it's the first time when I faced racism, when I first time really understood the word and what it means in society between the people's communication. It was never the case in Russia. Of course, there's small things, but very primitive from people who are so not well educated or something. But in Russia, I agree with you. Even I'm not a black woman, I've never heard or saw that my friends would judge someone for color, for nationality, for that was very new for me in Europe. Yeah. But I'm happy to hear that you felt the same and that you have good impression of Russia and that your time was actually great. But it was your work to make it happen. Have you heard of? Sorry, do you want to add something?
No.
Okay, I wanted to ask you if you heard about the German-American psychologist Erik Erikson. He is the guy who developed 8 stages of psychosocial development of the personality. And on every stage that person goes through, it creates a conflict between 2 issues. And when this person goes through this conflict good, it has a positive outcome, and if not, it has negative outcome. According to Erikson, you would be now on the 7th stage of psychosocial development, which is creates conflict between generativity and stagnation. It means that people between 40 and 60, numbers can vary, but these people, they tend to give back to society. They give a lot of attention to upbringing of the kids. They take activities in social life very much, and it creates a virtue of care, and the opposite would create the stagnation. So do you feel like to be in the stage? How do you express your care and giving back to the society?
Well, first of all, I've just turned 44 years old, but after my football career, I feel like I'm 54 years old. Um, but yeah, so I would agree with you that I am in that stage. With regards giving back to the community, this is a very vital stage for most footballers when they've retired. The community has supported them directly and indirectly throughout their careers, and it's important that we have some sort of give back. And so I'm a founder and director of two non-profit organizations here in South Africa, and I'm attempting to give back to the footballing community and to especially young athletes, both men and boys and girls, to try and encourage them to get into the sport, to be active, and to read as well. So yeah, that's what I'm attempting to do. With regards to stagnation, it's a danger for all professional athletes. I call it a game of two halves, where, you know, a coach, you will often hear a coach say post-match in an interview, it was a game of two halves. One half was good, one half was bad. And very similar to a footballer's career, the first half of your career is fantastic. You're an athlete, you're earning money, you're getting attention from the ladies. Everybody wants a piece of you. Journalists are phoning you on television. You're at the height of your career. And then all of a sudden, that gets taken away from you. And you begin your second half. Yeah, the second half of your career when you retire. Now what do? The journalists are not phoning you anymore. Your body is changing. Yeah. It's becoming softer. Psychologically, that can be very traumatic for any ex-athlete. So there are a number of elements that ex-professional athletes are sometimes not able to cope with. And unfortunately, here in South Africa and around the world, the statistics are not great. So, yeah.
We come to that point again, and I'm just surprised that you never asked me, what is the 8th stage, the last one of Ericsson? But we keep it for the next interview then.
I'm too afraid to ask.
It's a long way to go, don't worry. But that's a happy thing. I think if people deal with this in this phase this way, because one of my questions was about the midlife crisis, if you actually believe in it. And I think that has something to do with this stage. Do you believe in life?
Yeah, I don't think I've had my midlife crisis yet.
It doesn't have to be that it happens. Actually, it's the phenomenon that psychologists speak about, and we hear it very often in media. But or if you want to know my personal coach opinion to this issue, if you really deal in this phase of stagnation and generativity correct way, and if the outcome is positive, you just face this last stage of ego and integrity and despair. So this conflict, just wise enough, and you don't look back and saying like, oh, I missed the chances, or I didn't support these people, or kids have no contact with me, I was a bad father, things like that. So I think
so with my personality, for example, I consider myself to be quite stoic and not particularly emotional. Mm-hmm. Would that suggest that I'm less likely to suffer from a midlife crisis, or not?
Let's see. You tell me if you have any issues. Okay, that's interesting. Looking forward. But anyway, what about other crises and defeats in your life? Did you have some, what you can share, what you want to tell us about, and how did you come out of that, please?
Yeah, so my disappointments during my career were probably injury related. I remember getting called up to the World Cup squad in 2002, and on the way to Japan and Korea, We played a tournament in Hong Kong, and I picked up my first, not serious injury, because I was only out for a month, but the fact is that I missed the World Cup. Now, naturally, a World Cup is something that any footballer strives for, to be part of. You are very fortunate to take part in something like that, which only occurs every 4 years. So that looking back was, in hindsight, looking back, that was probably my most disappointing moment. But when I was in the moment, there was still something to look forward to. So I kind of very quickly put the disappointment aside and focused on the next attraction or the next objective, because I was still at the height of my career. I was still quite young, so there was always something to look forward to. So in the moment, it didn't disappoint particularly. But now that I've retired and I'm looking back, that definitely is my most disappointing moment, you know. And I've had more serious injuries later on in my career. And the way that perhaps I was treated by a club at the time, I used that anger to get back to full fitness. And again, looking back, I was disappointed in the way that the club treated me. So those were probably two moments in my career that I look back on and say, you know, if only. Yeah.
But understand me correctly, like, I don't regret cancer, so to say. I'm thankful that it happened. Are you feeling thankful that this crisis happened in your life? Did it teach you something?
Yeah, well, nothing can compare to what you've been through, Maria. So, and by the way, you first of all, are a very brave woman to have survived what you went through. That cannot be compared. So I'm a little embarrassed to talk about my my issues. But yes, that's. I felt I dealt with it well, but I think it was due to my personality. I was quite driven. I'm not emotional. I'm not somebody that looks back on. You can actually take it on a micro plane where, for example, whenever I'm playing a match and I make a slight mistake in the game, the older I got, the quicker I forgot about that mistake. And it would be almost instantaneous, you know, and that definitely helped me. Yeah. So I didn't dwell on that small mistake. And likewise, my disappointments throughout my career, I didn't dwell on it at the time. Now that I have time to think about it, I think about those instances quite often.
Now you have time to think about it. But I think you can apply this not only for sport and injuries, you can apply it also in life. That it makes just no sense to grieve a long time. I think even in certain cultures, in all cultures, if person dies, let's say, their relatives have certain time culturally to grieve. And the same with crisis. I think you have certain time to grieve when you go inside yourself, think about left, right, wrong, right, and then you have to go on to leave. Otherwise, it's a mistake, and next crisis is coming.
Yeah, no, you're right. And here in South Africa, there's also the comfort and belief that our relatives that have passed on, or our ancestors, are still with us. They're still connected to us in some way. So there is always that communication that's still available. And that definitely offers a certain amount of comfort for us as well.
Good. Everyone who has crisis, please don't stuck for a long time there, or look for a personal coach to help you out. All right, let's go on. And this is a big thing for me. Do you really think, or do you agree with me that discipline is a key to success? Because that's how I feel.
No, in our sporting life, that's the first principle. Is discipline. Sorry?
And normal life, let's say, part of just sport, let's say. career, other things, family, children?
Without a doubt, without a doubt, and especially when you have children, you have to set the example. Otherwise, it turns into a circus. You know, there has to be a certain amount of discipline. Now, you can be conservative, or you can be quite liberal. I try to keep a balance in life, where I'm quite conservative in some ways. For example, when my children were quite small, if they were naughty and they didn't listen, I would end up giving them a smack.
Oh.
Not a beating, just a smack. And that was what had happened to me as a youngster, and I felt that I needed to do something similar to my two boys, and they've turned out to be level-headed, very well-mannered young gentlemen. But of course, parenting, sometimes you just cross your fingers, you know, and you hope that they turn out okay. But I try to keep a balanced life in everything that I do. But certainly, discipline in the sporting arena is you have to have it. Otherwise, the talent pool globally and here in South Africa is so tight and so competitive that my advice that I give to young sportsmen is that often it's not your natural ability that lets you make it in life. It's often things like your dedication, your perseverance, your commitment, your discipline off the field. Are you able to listen to instruction and then take that onto the field? So just things like that will often put you above the rest of the pack. And I should imagine that's very similar in normal life as well.
I would be a good footballer.
I'm sure you would be.
What about your childhood, Matthew? Was it a happy time in your life when you look back?
Sorry, when?
How was your childhood, Matthew? Was it a happy time of your life?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town of Fishhook in Cape Town. And at school, we were offered a number of different sports. I got a decent education, although I was not an academic. I think in the classroom, I was in a dream world, you know. I was just thinking about getting out onto the field and playing cricket or playing rugby or playing football. So I don't really remember anything from my time inside the classroom at school. But outside of school and just, you know, my parents and the way that they brought us up and the opportunities that they gave us, despite not being particularly wealthy at the time, I think I can be very grateful. It's a beautiful part of the world as well. We spent a lot of time at the beach and in the sun. And yeah, I always have very good memories from my childhood. Yeah.
That's nice to hear. Do you think your happy childhood results in your happy marriage? It results in your happy, successful life? Has a connection?
I think not really my childhood, but I think the example that my parents have given us, that's something that drives me to then replicate their success. They've been married for over 40 years. They raised 3 children. I'm by the way stuck in between 2 sisters, so that's a whole different story about psychological trauma right there.
Yes, and the middle kid also.
Yeah. But so they're a fantastic example for what I'm now trying to strive for. Yeah.
That's good. You already told that you as a parent trying to give balance in things. And who are stricter, you or your wife with the kids? How is Nathan and Noah taking it?
I think we add value. in different aspects. I think we've attained a nice balance once again. But I would probably say myself by just a slight degree, though. I think she's a no-nonsense woman, and both our boys show us respect. And I don't have to smack them anymore. I just have to give them a look, a stern look, and if they get out of line. So yeah, I think we're both equals in that regard.
Yeah. Do you have high expectations on your kids according to your life way, your career, or you manage to calm this down with upbringing kids, showing the future, what they have to be?
Yeah, well, we've again, we've given them as many opportunities. As soon as you have a child, the dynamic changes. You cannot afford to be selfish anymore, and virtually all your energy and finances and time go towards that child or children, and that's quite a unique, unselfish act. In itself, but it happens almost naturally, nobody has to tell you to do it.
Yeah.
And so we've attempted to give them as many opportunities as possible, give them the best education as we can. And they both love football. They both love sports. So for me, it's a little bit of a sensitive topic, where my wife will sometimes accuse me of putting too much pressure on them to play football or to follow in daddy's footsteps. But I don't think I do in particular. But I've attempted to try and make it a natural experience for them as possible. But I can tell that they, the room that we're doing the interview in, there's lots of memorabilia and trophies and medals and pictures. And I'll often see them walk into this room and look and admire, and I can tell that perhaps they are wanting to, or they aspire to do something similar with their lives. But the biggest issue I have is that we are living in a very nice Gulf estate, and I'm worried that perhaps their life is a little bit too comfortable. Mm-hmm. In the sporting fraternity, most successful sportsmen, and especially football, come from working class or lower LSMs. Do you have the term LSM in Europe? Here,
I've heard about it, like the suburbs, the kids who come from, like, I belong to that group of people. Yeah.
So the LSM is the living standard measurement which we use here in South Africa. I'm not sure if it's a global measurement, but most successful footballers come from the lower LSM. So your middle class and upper class children at some stage lack the hunger to make it, and whereas the boys and girls from your lower LSMs sometimes don't have so many distractions and so many options.
I think it's called level, social, and not minority, the steps, the social steps, that's from lower social step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you speak to a scout at anywhere in the world, whether it's Brazil or South Africa or Europe, somebody who goes to look for talent, they will often tell you that they won't even bother going to your middle class or upper class areas. They will go to the ghetto, or they will go to the township, or they will go to a lower working class suburb to find talent. And that is something which I battle with my two boys, is to try and create that hunger. How do you generate that hunger to succeed?
Yeah.
So that's a constant battle. Yeah.
That's true. We are not born with it, and I agree with you totally. My daughter was 1.5 years old when everything happened, and I raised her by myself and still do it. But I see this in her eyes, that she is willing for more, and she's ready. She's never lazy or indolent. She's really she knows what she wants. And I think that I'm kind of also thankful that she has this way, instead of having everything and father around and grandmothers and so on. That's why how I treat the life. Then in the end, like, it happened. Look, the kid is hungry for life. So good things. That's
Oh,
good.
congratulations. Well done so far.
Yeah, so far, take it easy. But I hope that I think you manage it the way you say it about the balance and the weekends, and you try to show them how it can be. So it doesn't have to be football. It can be career as in finance, or it can be in engineering or something. But make out of your life something what you can be proud of in the stage of generativity and stagnation. All right, that's cool. What would be important, most important message for your kids if they would watch this interview one day, and you would say right now for your kids something very important?
Yeah, I think it would be something along those lines that we just discussed, you know, to not take anything for granted. And I would encourage them to, football has given me the opportunity to mix with different ethnicities, colors, languages, backgrounds, you name it. And that is one of the reasons why I encourage my boys to play football, because it takes them out of their cocoon and exposes them to the wide world. And that is something that I've benefited from as well, because it creates more empathy. And that is, living in South Africa, that is something that I would encourage them to attain, is empathy. And to try and get to know somebody well enough before you judge them, you know, before you look down on them. And that's not often the case, unfortunately. People, particularly here in South Africa, we still live in cocoons. And there's far too much judgment and ignorance, unfortunately. So that is a characteristic which I would love my two boys to have, is to show empathy. Yeah.
So with other words, you want that they actually become good people on the first place.
Yeah, first and foremost.
Yeah. So kids all over, I'll tell it my dog later. Make you sad. Yeah. I will read something out, and you tell me if these words belong to you. 75% of footballers, 5 years after retirement, they will either be bankrupt, divorced, or alcohol and drug dependent. We've got to change changing room talk, from what cars we bought to what businesses we're interested in. It's changing slowly, but not quickly enough. Would you tell us more if these words are yours? What did you find out after retirement? We touched this subject a little, but maybe more emotional details out of it. It's a hard process.
Yeah, we touched on the psychological trauma that sports people attain when they retire. And the statistics are 75% of footballers in Europe and here in South Africa will be 5 years after retirement bankrupt, divorced, or drug or alcohol dependent, or a mixture of those. When you look at the NFL and NBA in the United States, very similar numbers. So it's a global issue, and you know, we as sportsmen tend to get sucked into the status and trying to attain the status, and our community also puts pressure on us to buy the fancy cars and the fancy clothing, but we fail to realize that our career is only 10 to 15 years old, or long, should I say, if you're lucky. So players generally fail to start saving money at the right time. And here in South Africa as well, there's other pressures. A lot of my colleagues, you know, they don't only have to look after their mother and father and siblings, but more often than not, they also have to provide and look after for their aunts and uncles and cousins and their wider community. So that just means that they need to be saving even sooner. It's almost like the first contract that you sign, you've got to take into consideration the afterlife, your second half, which is going to come very quickly at you. And unfortunately, we don't get it right.
Do footballers have psychological counseling or psychologists from team management, which they can use after signing up the first contract? They can always knock the door and say, you know, I have the issue.
Unfortunately not. I know that in Europe and in South America, they do offer, but in South Africa, unfortunately not. This is something that during lockdown, everybody had time on their hands, but we basically started one of these non-profit organizations which is attempting to help ex-footballers. And when I wrote a letter to our sports minister, I made it public on social media. And funnily enough, or not funnily enough, but the general response, the huge response, the large percentage of them were from psychologists, industrial psychologists, and people offering to help pro bono with our cause. Mm. So similarly, during this pandemic, our healthcare workers and people from that industry have been absolute heroes. And again, this just showed to me that the part of that the medical fraternity, our psychologists, our local psychologists, really once again came to the fore and offered to help. Mm. So once we get it off the ground, they will be a huge part of our process. But unfortunately, clubs are businesses, and sometimes the business owner doesn't see value in something that he or she cannot feel, cannot touch, and perhaps doesn't see the value in marketing their club or having a psychologist on board. But hopefully we'll get there soon.
Do you have one psychologist or personal coach? Do you need one?
No, I've got my own personal one now on Instagram. So no, I don't need one.
Okay.
No, I haven't used one before. We have had psychologists once in a while attend team meetings, but not on a regular basis.
Okay.
And generally, the club only calls them when we're in trouble. Yeah.
Yes, I used to use it to come out of trouble, but now I have a personal coach just to exchange, like a mentor, and you come with new aims, with new goals, and like, what do you think, how to achieve, and like, look at this perspective, look from this perspective. So I see it more as a positive thing, although I work with people who are really in mental problems, and it's leading a hard life, but I really want to work more with people who, or let's say, to have this balance, what you were speaking about before, from people who want to achieve more and people who you give a hand, like, come on, join us.
Yeah, it's you hit the nail on the head there. I think we, just people in the sports fraternity and just in general life as well, we should be more goal-driven. And I think to have a psychologist remind you of that and to advise you and to guide you on how to attain that, I think is important too.
I think so too. I would like to ask you about Book of Your Gorgeous Wife, which you published in 2014. It's called How to Reinvent Yourself and Stay Relevant. Could you tell me more about this, and maybe you tell me that you inspired her with your retirement?
Yeah, well, she did a degree in branding and marketing, so she really loves that aspect of life. And she spent a good couple of months writing it and delving into it. And it's a very good read, a very easy read, and offers fantastic advice for the very you know, the very reason that we that we are here, exactly what we're talking about, you know, today, you know, especially with ex-athletes, is how to navigate their journey from being the supreme athlete to managing your retirement. So yeah, it's very relevant, I think, for everybody. I think there's times in everybody's lives where they need to reinvent themselves, and not to get sucked into the daily grind of 9 to 5. So yeah, she enjoyed the writing process. She's also written a second book, consequently, so she enjoys the process. And
if you don't mind, probably you could share with me the electronic version of it. I would love to get know more about it. And I do on my Instagram page every Tuesday, or now I'm changing the days, the reviews to the books I liked or I didn't like. And I would love to probably make a review on this book, if I'm allowed to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that.
Oh, thank you. Say best regards to Sonya Buff. She's so beautiful. I checked the pictures and I saw her live. And I was like, but I saw now the last pictures, like she doesn't get older, she's getting younger. Like, how does it work? Do you have different air in South Africa or what?
I've often asked her for her secret, but she refuses to give it to me. So yeah, as you can see.
Okay, Matthew, we soon have to finish, but I want to go to the last block of our interview. It's the first interview I have, but I plan to have this last block of questions, which I'm going to ask you quickly, and you're going to answer them quickly. But today is the 1st of April. What do you think if we would just go on wearing some masks from Instagram? Do you think we can manage them to make this process funnier?
No, I've seen too many accidents on Instagram and Zoom. Lawyers turning into cats. So no, I'm not prepared to do that.
Okay. Okay, let's keep it this way then. And I'm going to ask you quick questions. You're going to answer me this quickly. And that would be it. Ready?
Go for it.
Cristiano Ronaldo or Diego Maradona?
Maradona.
Hockey or tennis?
Tennis.
Rich and stupid or intelligent and poor?
Sorry, just repeat that.
Rich and stupid or intelligent and poor?
Intelligent and poor. Although that was touch and go.
Yeah. Russia or England?
Russia, of course.
Ego or self?
Self.
If tomorrow is the last day you leave, what are you going to do?
Go to the beach with a very large cocktail.
What living person do you most admire?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. If I can include two, I think both my parents. I don't want to say any politician or anything like that. So.
Okay. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Probably my stubbornness. Yeah.
Sonya is watching.
Absolutely.
What do you consider your greatest achievement?
Probably having raised two gentlemen so far. Yeah, my two young boys.
What is your greatest regret?
Not playing in the English Premier League.
If you could choose when and how to die, what would it be? Hard one.
So Ooh, did you think of these questions? I've always thought that, 75 years of age would be a good time to go.
Really?
Yeah.
Early?
Yeah. I think any older than that, then I'll just be a burden, you know? So 75 would be good.
Okay.
How? Probably having my final game of football.
On the field. Okay, and the last question. If you meet God after your death, what would you say to him?
Did I do well?
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Bam, yeah. Dear
Did I do well enough? You know, did I live a full life? Did I maximize it? You know,
and he
that's
said,
what I would ask.
do you remember the stage of generativity and stagnation? By Eric Erickson. Oh, dear Matthew, thank you very much for your conversation, for your time, and I hope you really enjoyed it with me. And I hope you and your family stay healthy in this time, and all of us, people who are watching us, people who will watch us, and people who will never watch us, I still wish everyone that we soon get over this time of Corona, and we're going to travel and use our precious time on the things that really matter. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for a very refreshing and different conversation. I've done many of these interviews, but this was at a different, completely different slant. So very refreshing. And yeah, thank you for the stimulating conversation.
Thank you, Matthew, very much. It was Matthew Booth, much more than a football player. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.